Hey guys, so welcome to the first development log of my Tower of Terror simulator in Unreal Engine 5. Now first I've got some footage of me just doing some modeling in my modeling software. I've sped it up by 10 times because this footage is like 2 hours long. So I've cut it down to about 2 minutes. So here you can see I'm just creating some of the larger three-dimensional components of the building. When it comes to smaller details, obviously this simulator is going to be like 4K resolution, right? So it's going to be really realistic and accurate to the real building. The goal is to make it feel like you're actually there while you're going through this simulator, down to the smallest details. If you want to go look at a sign, you're going to be able to see that the sign is made of metal and that it's got little dirt in all its little crevices and it's held onto the wall by nails, and it's not just like floating there like some video game. So one thing I pay a lot of attention to here is spacing between components, especially the larger components. If a roof is not the correct height or a pillar is not, the correct depth or width, it'll just ruin the illusion completely. So a lot of the times I actually have to create these components and then edit them ad nauseum until they're perfect. With usually, as you can see, I have photo references in the background of these specific parts of the tower. I have one far shot where I can see the scale in relation to these other components, which you can kind of see mirrored. And then I have another one which is like an HD close-up, so I can actually see the finer shapes and details to make sure I get everything correct. Now, what I'm modeling right now is actually the roof of the library scene, where after you go through the hotel lobby, you enter the library where the pre-show is, and then that little area to the very far right, that little square, is actually the hallway where you come out of the library and start walking towards the boiler room where you embark on your maintenance service elevator. So this little part of the building eventually will have a library inside it. It is kind of cool that even though this is all an illusion and a 3D model, because I am creating it at the exact scale that the real model is, every single inch of this structure is almost the right measurements as like the real one. Now here you can see I'm just sort of blocking out the rest of the structure. Before I started with just like modeling everything in super fine detail, one by one, but now what I'm going to do is just block out the structure just so I can kind of get an idea of like the scale and sort of what it will look like when it's done, and then I'll go through one by one and go through each component and detail it at a much better level of detail and resolution later on. Once I'm finished modeling the entire tower in its entirety, I'll move on to the shading and texturing phase, which will take another couple hundred of hours. And that's when the model is really going to start coming to life and it'll start looking like the real thing. Unfortunately, until we reach that point, it's just going to look like a very detailed pastel white model, as you can see in this example here where I'm playtesting. Some of the parts that are finished, I regularly playtest them to make sure that the scale in relation to our main character is correct. And periodically I've found that I actually have to go back and forth constantly editing just to make sure. As an example, I made the ceiling in there way too high before, and I had to go in and edit it about 4 feet out of it. I had to bring the ceiling about 4 feet down. As you can see here, these little portions closer to the character are finished, which is why they have a much greater level of detail, whereas the ones in the background, which are just a block out, are mainly just there for perspective and scale so I can see what it might look like. And that pretty much wraps it up for my first devlog. If you liked the video, please like and subscribe, and stay tuned for the next one.